Welcome to Cattle Connect, your insight into Alabama's beef cattle industry. I'm your host, Erin Beasley, and this is Cattle Connect, brought to you by the Alabama Cattlemen's Association. Welcome back, cattlemen. I come to you today with a much easier load on my shoulders, as we are very happy to say the legislature has officially adjourned Sine Die for the 2025 session. Today's podcast will be a full recap of everything that's happened, along with how bills landed that we have worked on or monitored all throughout the session on your behalf. Joining me today, also looking a little lighter on her feet, is my pal Kayla Greer, who serves as a lobbyist alongside me here at the association. Kayla, how are you feeling today?
I'm just happy to be here. I'm happy to be in the office.
Yeah?
Getting some projects done that have been put on the back burner for the past few months. Just proud as I can be to be here.
Yes, the summer list has officially been dusted off and added to, and I think we all are ready to kind of shift focus that way.
Yep.
It's going to be a good summer, but a good session for us. I'm excited to go over everything that happened because I know you and I were talking, and we haven't done this since we did a mid-session podcast. That seems like it was 4 months ago.
Yeah, at least.
But it wasn't. It was only back in March. But if you've ever been through a session, they're a little just methodical and just heavy, and you just feel like you're never going to get to the end. So it's really good to be done. Just as kind of a recap to start with, just to remind everybody, the session did start at the 1st of February, and it, they have basically 105 days to meet up to 30 times. As is normally the case, they did take all 30 days this session, so they completed and adjourned Sine Die on Wednesday. And so happy to report to all of our members, overall, we considered it a very good session for us. A lot of good things came out of it that we were working on, as well as some other good bills that we're gonna hit on today that a lot of our friends in the ag industry are working on, and it's probably going to benefit our members as well. There's a lot of crossover there. So
yeah, that's right.
So I guess Kayla, we'll just kind of dive in, and going into the session, we really had a couple of priorities, but one of those was budgetary items that we were working on.
We were like laser focused on budgets this year going into it. We knew that there were going to be other things come up, but like the focus, the main goal rotated around the budget. So tell us a little bit about how the Education Trust Fund ended up.
Yep. So Education Trust Fund, I believe another record year, looking at a budget that passed at nearly $10 billion.
And that's billion with a B.
Yeah, as Governor Ivey would say, that's billion with a B. And so that particular fund, just as a reminder, all of your property taxes, your sales tax revenue, a lot of different things go into building out the tax base that can make up that Education Trust Fund. And so a lot of work for that committee. Kayla, I know we heard a lot throughout the session, and even last year and kind of going forward, we'll hear that, the projection is that these revenues are going to come down.
Start going down, yeah.
Yeah, so there's been some supplemental things that have come into the state the last 5 years, just coming off of COVID. A lot of that's gone, and so now they're talking about how things are going to kind of shift the other way. However, they were, they did pass a $10 billion budget, and as you've outlined in one of the slides that you're working on for the board meeting, Kayla, that was a 6% increase over the previous year.
Yeah. So while we might start to see a trend down this year, that was not the case. There was not as much of a trim down this year as we might have thought there was going to be going into it.
Yep. So you probably are asking, well, what does that have to do with us? Well, there are things within both of the budgets that we work on to try to either keep or increase during the year. And so this particular year, really glad to report that the budgets had a few line items that were either level funded or bumped up a little bit.
Right.
And so one of those that is particularly important to us is there is some money in there for junior cattlemen programs. And so we are able to use that money for educational enhancements to a lot of the programs that we do. And so we're really thankful to get that money once again. And it actually got bumped up some this year. There are some other line items related to career tech education that we spend time on. Alabama FFA, there is money in the budget that actually supports the membership statewide membership for all the kids in FFA. And so that's a great way for Alabama to increase its membership and have great representation, not only at the state level, but the national level.
Right.
And then two that are really important to us are line items related to Auburn University. One is for the livestock judging coach. So that's for Auburn to maintain a livestock judging program that's very competitive, which we know in the last year they were very competitive. And then also the youth livestock specialist, which that position is going to be very instrumental in developing at the grassroots level youth livestock programming. And we know that we need to put a lot of emphasis there. So a lot of good things in the ETF. Overall, it was good success for us. And so that takes us over to the general fund. And so, Kayla, you tell us a little bit about the general fund and how we landed there.
Yeah, so general fund doesn't have quite as many line items that we watch out for during the session, but there are two. So one of them is the entire Department of Agriculture and Industries. Pretty much that entire department is funded through the general fund. They've got a couple of line items in the Education Trust Fund, but by and large, they live in the general fund sector, and we were really proud to see either leveled or increased funding for the department in this year's budget. Excited about that. That's always a good thing that we advocate for. And then, as you may remember in listening to one of our pre-session podcasts, as we talked about what our goals were going to be going into the session, one of our biggest goals was to get increased funding for the SIP program, which is the Conservation Incentive Program that is housed in the Alabama Agriculture Conservation Development Commission and administered through the Alabama Soil and Water Committees. And so we are very proud to report that we were successful in that endeavor. We saw a $500,000 plus up in those programs, and hopefully we will see that money administered into increased funding for cattle practices out on the countryside. So that'll be things like portable corrals, squeeze chutes, concrete pads for heavy use areas, feed troughs. There's lots of different cattle practices. I encourage you to either go back and listen to that podcast or go explore the Alabama Soil and Water Conservation District website, and you can find a cattle practice that might work for your farm. Who knows? And learn more about that program. But that's the two things for the general fund that we kind of prioritized this year and are proud to report either on if we're talking Department of Ag, we saw level funding, and the SIP program saw a plus up. So excited about that.
And Kayla, just kind of what led to us working with AACDC to get this increase in funding is that they expressed to us a lot. So for members out there, one of the things that we do is we are represented on a lot of different boards. We attend a lot of different meetings.
Right.
And the reason for that is A, to educate ourselves, B, to have your voice at the table, and C, to look for opportunities to enhance the cattle industry. And
right.
So this is a really good example of us being involved, attending the board meetings for the Soil and Water Conservation Committee, as well as the AACDC. Mm-hmm. And by doing that, by being involved in these meetings, we found out that at the local level, these counties, there's a lot of applications coming in from cattle producers for these practices to be funded, and there just isn't enough
There's
money.
not enough money. A lot of them are going unfunded, yeah, or very minimally funded.
Right, and so we all know the cost of things like a cattle handling system, and so that's where this all initiated from. Was we saw, hey, there's a need there, and we felt like we could work with them and partner and try to help increase that funding, and luckily we were able to do it. I really want to give a shout out to the budget chairs. They're always really helpful to us when we come to them because we have good practical things that we bring forward. Mm-hmm. We can justify everything. And like we told them when we were having conversations about this is a great program for especially our young farmers that are trying to get into the industry or maybe expand or get their foot in the door. What a great way for them to utilize a cost share program so that, if they're having to expend capital in other areas, at least within that area, they can have a little bit of help with some of this state funding.
I also think it's an easy picture to paint because these funds are going directly to their constituents. And we encourage you guys, like I've said before, go learn about that program, the Conservation Incentive Program, and see if it could help you or a neighbor. And if you have any questions about it, please don't hesitate to call our office and talk to Erin and I. We can definitely get you in contact with the right folks. So, Erin, we had a couple of bills pop up this session that we didn't have on the radar. You want to talk about one or two of those?
Yeah, we had a few we worked on. First of all, we probably spent the most time on a bill that was related to the veterinary client-patient relationship, also known as a VCPR. And,
right.
Kayla, I remember we were at convention when we first got flagged on that bill.
We were sitting in the boardroom in Birmingham.
Yep, we were in Birmingham, and we learned that SB 185 had dropped, and pretty extensive bill, several pages long, and a lot of language, and so luckily Senator Price, who was the bill sponsor, he was there at the convention, and we were able to just kind of grab him and say, hey, we haven't even read it yet, but I did get some text messages on it. Hey, can we talk about it? He's yeah, read it and let me know. And so, that's one of the great things about having, a bill sponsor that we have a good relationship with is that we can just be really upfront and say, hey, we might have an issue here, and we can come straight to the table. And so that's what happened with this bill. We did read through it, found some, things in it, some language that we felt like would be really, really cumbersome, not only for the cattlemen, but also for large animal veterinarians, which we know are in shortage in this, not only in our state, but across the entire country. So there was a good bit of work back and forth. We're trying to work with the Alabama Veterinary Medical Association. They certainly have some priorities that they want to get done. And, we know where we are on it. We know that we need a practical definition of what this VCPR is or is not.
Yeah.
For those that are not aware, whatever is codified about veterinary practice, the Veterinary Medical Examiners Board then serves as an enforcement arm to make sure that vets are following this code, this state statute. So we want to make sure the language is right, first and foremost. And so this bill did not ultimately pass. We tried to find some compromise language. And at the end of the day, I think we're going to spend the off season probably a lot of time with AVMA to see if we can get somewhere that makes for a good bill that everybody's happy with. It's good for the producer, it's good for the veterinarian, and helps them, maybe they can accomplish what they are trying to do. And then also we are looking out for our folks at the same time.
Right. Yeah. That bill was nowhere on our radar as we walked into the session, and it's probably, like you said, what we spent the majority of our time on when it was all said and done. But there is a solution out there. We'll find it.
Yeah. And we had poultry at the table with us.
That's right.
Really enjoyed having, Johnny Adams from Alabama Poultry and Egg. And again, credit to Senator Price. We were all just really upfront across the whole way. And, he said, hey, I'm not going to move that bill until everybody's happy with it. And he didn't. I really appreciate him for that. And, telling us, hey, everybody just needs to get around the table and work this out. So we will work to achieve that.
Yep. And in the meantime, we've made a new partner at Alabama Veterinary Medical Association, met some of the folks over there and some of their leaders. So it's been an interesting growth experience all around.
Yeah, that's part of the fun of working these bills is you do get to meet a lot of different people. So another group that we probably didn't expect to work with was the Alabama Deer Breeders Association. So Kayla, tell us about that bill.
Yeah, so Representative Jeff Sorrells dropped HB 509, and it covered a variety of topics within the whitetail breeding industry. So we're not talking hunting, we're talking the breeding industry. And particularly this bill, it dealt with a lot of nuances, but it primarily kind of handled the ownership of captive cervids. That's the official term for whitetail deer that are in a breeding facility. And so right now, as it stands, or no, I guess not now, but previously, the state of Alabama owned all whitetail deer in the state, whether they were wild or captive. And so this bill dealt with some of that, kind of reassigning ownership. And then it also dealt with the management of the chronic wasting disease monitoring program. And that includes, and under that umbrella is the movement of these captive cervids in a CWD surveillance zone. And, we didn't have a lot to do with most of this bill, but the movement of those deer in a surveillance zone is where we kind of flagged a little bit because some of these diseases, maybe not CWD, but other diseases, are communicable across species. And so if a deer has the ability to move when it has a diagnosed disease, well, it might be able to toss that disease to to a local cattle herd. And so we had to activate on that a little bit. In the end, after some work, again, getting to know some of the folks at the Alabama Deer and the Game Breeders Association, it ended up, after some negotiations, we got a peace of mind amendment that was adopted in the Senate and then concurred on in the House that would loop in the state veterinarian and the Department of Ag and Industries in the event of a communicable disease. So whitetail breeders kind of got what they wanted out of it, and we were able to flag that issue and get it handled as well. So appreciate everybody that we got to work on with that. How did I do on that, Erin? Did that cover it for the most part?
Yeah, that covers it. I mean, we're all about protecting the cow herd. That's first and foremost what we have to do. And that means that everybody else has to, protect theirs.
Right.
And then also be able to work with us on ours. And so that was just one of those deals where, everybody just needed to come to the table once again, kind of talk through things.
Right. Just hear all sides of the story.
And we know that it's important to, right now, especially we're dealing with disease and other things going on, but
and I really think that was the basis behind the disease, or behind the negotiations that we had, is our concern for disease, because there is so much money and effort being put into research and prevention methods in the cattle industry, not only in Alabama, but nationwide. And so this is just another way of preventing the spread of communicable diseases. And so that's just a flag in our department, because we're so used to talking about these types of diseases that it just immediately threw a red flag for us. And we said, hey, we're doing so much work on the cattle industry side to make sure that we're not spreading diseases and that we're keeping preventable diseases out of the cow herd. And so we need to address this issue in this bill.
Your membership matters. Join the ACA today and tap into our exclusive member benefits, including a subscription to the Alabama Cattleman magazine. Learn more and sign up today at bamabeef.org/join.
So that moves us kind of outside of maybe our window of things that we were working the most on. But we had a lot of our partners in agriculture that were also working on legislation. Probably good to give our members a little report on that, Kayla, because we know that we cross over. Everybody's got multiple commodities maybe.
Right.
They have other interests. And so we're just going to do a quick rundown of some other things that we feel like may apply to you. They may not, but just wanted you to know about them. So, Kayla, why don't you lead us off with the Alpha Health Plan?
Yeah, super excited to report. So we had a couple of podcasts about this and mentioned it along the way, but HB 477, also known as Alpha Health Plans, has passed, and it has been signed by Governor Kay Ivey. It will be effective June 1st, 2025, and then, of course, they'll have to stand up the program. And soon enough, what that will do is it will offer an affordable health care option to Alabama's farmers and small business owners. Just major round of applause to the governmental affairs team at Alpha. Erin,
absolutely
class act.
They hit it out the park. Those guys worked super hard. I'm just really happy for them. They've been working on this one for quite some time, and great effort. And this is something that is not only going to be helpful for Alpha members, but this is going to be helpful for a lot of our members too that are also
Alpha members. That's right. So what this does is it offers that affordable healthcare option, and it's a plan administered through the Alpha Farmers Federation, the foundation there, and it will offer, it's a non-ACA compliant plan, so Affordable Care Act plan. So what they can do is they can underwrite risk and do some things in the insurance world that will help reduce the cost of your policy if you're accepted into the program. And so just really excited to see that play out now that the hard, step one of the hard parts is kind of done. They've got the legislation in place. Now they can stand it up. And soon enough, they'll be opening up these things and folks will be applying. And hopefully this is something, one of the huge talking points that they had throughout the session is that healthcare is one of the most expensive pieces of the farm family's budget. A lot of the time it exceeds the mortgage, the car payment, all these other things. And so, if that's one of the things that's keeping young people from either entering into farming or taking over the next generation of a family farm, then this is something that we need to address. And so we all know that healthcare is a very restrictive piece of the puzzle. And so hopefully this will help play that part in getting young people and young families into farming or taking over the family farm, and just really, really excited for them. And, the bill didn't come out without amendment. They had to do some work in the House and in the Senate to get it to the finish line, but they took on a few amendments, and the team at Alpha has given us the thumbs up that they're all friendly amendments. So excited to just see this play out. And again, awesome job to the governmental affairs team at Alpha, to everybody, all the farmers and small business owners that showed up to testify in committee and call your representative and senator, just everybody that played a part in this. Great job. And I would be remiss if I did not give kudos to Representative David Faulkner, who absolutely championed that bill. So really, really good job to everybody involved. As a fairly new lobbyist, I took a lot of notes. just a really, like I said, a class act on getting a tough bill across the finish line.
And I'll say this. It was really great to see so many members in the State House all session.
Yes, so many cowboy hats. I mean, a lot of legislators were having a great time with that.
It was good. I felt like we were having a membership meeting every week in the State House.
Yes, lots of friendly faces throughout the day. Loved that, especially on committee days.
Yes, it was good. Well, Kayla, one more on the Forestry Association bill. Give us a preview or a little recap on that, and then I'll round us out with a couple of quick hitters.
Yeah, so like our friends at Alpha, they went into the session with this main piece of legislation that they were going to be working on. Our friends at Forestry had a similar story. So the Alabama Forestry Association went into the session with a bill, and it was SB 10. It was being carried by Senator Jack Williams, and its primary goal was to increase axle weights by 10% plus the allowable load tolerance. If you're a logger out there or involved in the forestry industry, you know what I'm talking about. Their goal was to increase axle weights, not total load weight, just the distribution across axles. And then it would also deal with limiting the number of trucks that could be stopped at a portable weigh station, and a couple other little nuances in there that would help protect loggers and ALEA officers. At the end of the day, though, it doesn't always work out so pretty. So at the end of the day, significant amendments were made, and that bill was actually stripped of all language that increased axle weights. There were several folks that opposed that move, and so that was not able to get successfully across the finish line in its entirety. So the bill was stripped of anything that dealt with increasing axle weights, but it does now enforce that the number of traffic stops at a portable weigh station can only be, I think it's 3 trucks. And it does allow truckers to contest tickets that they get in a digital format instead of having to appear at court. So some good things did come out of it. It might not have accomplished the big goal that they had in mind as they went into it, but I imagine we'll see more of Forestry Association in future years. Erin, I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, they really do a good job. That one was an uphill battle too.
Yeah, sure was.
And they accomplished a lot in that bill.
That's right.
And I think that they can slowly chip away at that one, hopefully.
Yeah.
Because it is an issue that they're running into.
Yeah, a little more education, a little more conversations to educate the folks who might have been opposed to it. And, at the end of the day, they were not increasing the load.
That's right.
Weight. They were just
distribution.
Just the distribution. So I think there's just some education that might need to be done along the way.
Okay, so to round us out, we did have a couple of things that we just wanted to fly everybody on. One, something that affects every Alabamian. Alabama is still one of just a few states that has a grocery tax. Mm-hmm. Previous years of the legislature has reduced that. It was going into this session. It's currently at 3%, and a bill did pass that actually decreases that now to 2%.
Whoop,
and
whoop.
so happy about that. Maybe one day we'll get to 0% on the grocery
good.
tax. That would be very nice. So definitely want to let everybody know about that. And then another little bunch of bills was related to small business. We know many of our members are also, small business owners, or, some of these things may apply to your farm in some way. One is that currently in Alabama, there is a business personal property tax exemption. That threshold was currently at $40,000. And there was a bill that passed and is now law, and that increases the $40,000 to $100,000. So that's a good small business bill on your business personal property. So that is one that we wanted to flag. And then secondly, this is kind of a funny story, but it is related to the Alabama Ad Valorem Advisory Council. Now, Kayla, most of our members
give us some more about what that is.
Probably don't know that even exists, but as we know, there's a lot of little committees and councils all through state government. This one was actually established just a couple of years ago. I remember when the legislation passed, and it's advisory council that has to do with property taxes, ad valorem taxes.
Right.
And once that was established, I remember we decided, Kayla, that we were going to attend with our friend Rosemary from NFIB, go check things out one day.
Little field trip.
Made the trip to the council meeting. We're sitting there, and we realized that we were the only people in there that weren't affiliated.
That weren't on the council.
Weren't on the council, first of all. But secondly, everyone that serves on the council were those that were involved with collecting the taxes.
Yeah, the collection part of it.
Yeah, collection piece. So anyway, there was a bill that passed related to the structure of that council. And happy to say that there's now a person on there that serves as a lay person, and they are a taxpayer. as Rosemary would say.
Probably good to have them on there.
So probably good just from the standpoint of having, somebody, probably a business-minded person on there.
And to be fair, I mean, most of these committees and councils in state government do have a layperson seat. You mentioned earlier the Veterinary Medical Examiners Board. They have a layperson seat. Yep. So it's not an uncommon practice.
Yeah, those are typically pretty diverse groups. I know I can think of several off the top of my head where you're having to find people that aren't necessarily in that profession directly, but maybe they're connected in some way.
Right.
And that's to bring different perspectives.
Right.
Because, I know how it is, sometimes we get pretty narrow-sighted just talking cattle.
Right.
And I go to another ag meeting and all of a sudden we get to talking, oh, well, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about it from that perspective. So, well, that kind of wraps things up as far as all the things there. Let's see here, Kayla. There was over 700 House bills.
Yeah,
it was 300 Senate bills.
Yeah.
And we talked about maybe 10 bills today.
At most.
So all that to say, there's a lot more that happened, but in an effort to keep this podcast within the, kind of 30-minute threshold, we just wanted you to know about things that we've worked on. And so there is a lot that got covered. And as always, we would, if there's something that is, maybe you had flagged during the session or something that you're kind of watching, something that you'd like to chit-chat about, give us a call at the office. We'd love to talk to you about it. Again, there's a lot happening, but I am glad it's over, just like every other lobbyist in town. And we will now look forward to the coveted election season. Here it goes.
It's coming in hot.
Get ready. It's going to be election season, and then they will reconvene next year for the 2026, as far as we know.
Yep. January 13th is the day.
Is that the day?
Yeah, that's the day, January 13th. So we'll get through with Christmas and get right back in it. So, all right. Well, appreciate the opportunity to chat through this. Encourage you to check out the June issue of the Alabama Cattleman magazine. We'll have a legislative recap there too, kind of in writing. And if that's all, Erin, I think I'm going to adjourn this podcast.
I'm going to adjourn it. Sine Die.
That's right. Come back next week for more Cattle Connect podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Cattle Connect, brought to you by the Alabama Cattlemen's Association. Be sure to subscribe to get notified when our next episode goes live. Until next time, remember, beef, it's what's for dinner.